Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this 3 o'clock hour on Monday afternoon. I'd like to welcome a GoLocal regular, Shira Hirschberg. Thank you for coming in today.
Sure, glad to be here.
With all foods nutrition, it's beginning to feel a little springy outside.
It is, finally.
Finally. So lots of folks talk about spring cleaning. When you think of spring cleaning, you might think of closets, you might think of basements. But what about kitchens and pantries? You've probably got a lot of stuff on your shelves. Is it a good time to really take stock? But where do you begin?
So yes, good time of year to harness the spring cleaning energy and look into your food situation, because lots of you have crackers from 1984. I know you have them. I've cleaned out other people's pantries. I know they're there. So this is a good time to take everything out. So in the beginning, I recommend starting with a full removal, because it's really hard to catch those crackers if you don't take everything out. They'll hide. So you clear off some surfaces. You've got a table available, a lot of space. And I recommend throwing everything on that, getting some Post-its, starting to label some categories. So the categories depend on what you've got in your pantry. But things like grains, breakfast, you can go by meals, you can go by type of food, whatever seems to work for you. Maybe, you know, in my house we have a nuts category. We have enough nuts to make that a category, so it just depends on what you have a lot of in your house. So Post-it some things out, start grouping things together, and that will give you an idea of what you have. That's the first thing, is to take stock.
That's step one. Are we looking at sell-by dates then?
I didn't go there for this segment. You know, it's interesting. I was just reading some information about that, because they put those on there more for a quality control standpoint than for a food safety standpoint. Okay. So let's say it's a little bit past the sell-by date. That doesn't mean it's going to give you a, foodborne illness, but it does mean the quality has deteriorated. But anything that's, from a year that you're not in, I recommend, if any of those dates have a year that you're not in as a sell-by or use-by, I recommend getting it out of there. It's a good first pass at dealing with those things. If you want to be on the quality control standpoint, yeah, use those dates. If you want to be on the food safety standpoint, use a loose interpretation of those dates.
I always get told that all the time myself. And actually, one of the things about getting it all out of your pantry, too, is you can clean stuff up. I mean, you might have some bags of grains or some bags of stuff, and it might kind of maybe found its way down to the cupboard.
Absolutely. You might have holes in your bags. You might have pantry moths. You also might have just some general dirt and grime under there, so it's a good time to clean the shelves.
It's a good time to clean. And when you have all the stuff out there, let's talk about a few things. Springtime, people thinking of eating healthy, maybe eating healthier with an eye to the summer. Yeah. We talked a little bit about this beforehand, too. I mean, if there's something you might not need, don't throw out, give away.
Right, absolutely. So the great thing is that the Rhode Island Food Bank, it's on Niantic Ave, they will take donations 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. There might even be more hours than that, but it's right on their website, super easy. Rhode Island Food Bank is always taking donations. So let's say you've switched over to whole grains. That's been your resolution this year. You don't eat anything but whole wheat pasta anymore, but you've got 6 boxes of different types of pasta.
Perfectly fine pasta.
But refined grain, and you don't want to eat anymore. I really recommend sticking to the stuff you actually want to eat and getting rid of that other stuff, because it's kind of like leaving clothes in your closet that don't fit anymore. You really don't want them there. You got to get rid of them. I agree. Same thing with pantry. Closet and pantry, they go together. So just put them all in a box and bring them down to the Rhode Island Food Bank, or other, there are other places that you might know of that you want to donate to, but that's always a good one to be on standby.
And what should you do, too, if there are some foods that are maybe part of your diet, but something that, just from a health standpoint, maybe it's a mac and cheese. Should you really know yourself if you're like, well, if it's in there and I have nothing left in the house, I know I'm going to go toward it. Like, should you keep it on standby knowing that you might have it every so often, or do you have to know yourself and say, I know that's my go-to if I really have nothing else?
Yeah, I think everybody's a little different. The thing that's tricky for me is that usually if people don't have things like that are kind of fairly quick and easy options, what they will do is they'll order out, they'll get takeout, they'll go out to a restaurant, right? Usually that's the fallback. And that's not usually healthier than the mac and cheese you have in your pantry. So I recommend keeping some things on hand that are quick and easy and reasonably healthy, right? There are a lot of ways to make a mac and cheese healthier. You can add some things like vegetables, for instance, to those to health them up, and that is a better way than just keeping none of those foods in your house, because people with an empty pantry and an empty refrigerator
can make some probably less than healthy choices, as you said. So. Right. They might be the least of the evils when you're encountering them. So, yeah. Okay, so you've brought it all out, you're looking at it. Before you go to, let's talk maybe about reorganizing.
Sure.
Because, I know I go through the pantry, I'm like, oh, I didn't know I had that jar of sauce. And should it really sort of be categorical and really try to stick to it?
I think so. Everybody's going to end up with miscellaneous. So when you enter my pantry, most people give me some version of a wow. And that wow might be a wow, you're a lunatic. Or it might be a wow, I'm really impressed by how organized your pantry is. It just depends on the person. But what I've done and what I really think is very helpful for a lot of people is put things in bins or baskets, whatever you like. Something, let's say they're tall, you might want them to be see-through. If they're shorter and smaller, they might not need to be if you can see the foods that are in there, but then you gotta label them. So depending on the type of thing, a bag or a basket, I have laminated tags hanging from each of my baskets. And that tells me what's in that. And then I can just pull that basket down and take a look if I want more details. Maybe it'd just be a label on a clear basket. There are a lot of ways to do it. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you got to have some sort of organization, because if you don't have clearly defined categories, you just shove things wherever's fastest when you get home from the grocery store. So if you have a system and then other people in your house can't ruin the system. I'm not naming anyone in my life. I'm just saying that if you have a system, then it's easy for everybody to stick with it and keep things in the right category so that you can find stuff when you need it. And when you want crackers, you don't say, I need more crackers, instead of let's eat the crackers from 2 years ago. If that's what you would like to do. So it really helps, I think, to have those. And it also increases your storage capacity by a whole lot. So just from a basic standpoint of space, right, you can store so many things this way, but baskets give you room this way that you wouldn't have had. So it allows you to have more food, which, usually is a good thing. It can get extreme, like I said, if you've got stuff from 1984, but usually having more available for things that are ready to cook is a good thing.
And one of the advantages, too, is if you have children of an age that can prepare their own foods or look for snacks, and it's there where they're not, Mom, Dad, where's the blank?
Right, where's the nuts? In the nuts bin.
And as you're taking stock of your pantry, again, it's that time of year to think, what could I possibly augment? Maybe you're a rice and a pasta person, maybe some beans. But what are some thoughts as to, again, as we head into the summer months, to say, maybe you should think about, having this on hand when you really want to create healthy dinners, especially weekdays, and especially when you might not have a ton of time.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of having a lot of ready-to-go, easy options. So when it comes to summertime, we're starting to think about salads. I hate lame salads. If your salad has lettuce and tomatoes and carrots, I'm not going to eat it. I'm bored. I want an exciting salad. So for me to make a salad exciting, it takes something with crunch. So that's usually, I have, always tortilla chips on hand, so that's an easy one. I don't have to buy something extra. I also really like those sesame sticks, right? Your salad's not full of them, but a little crunch on top goes a long way for interest. If your salad is boring, you're not going to eat it that often. So another thing I really like is fruit. Not everybody, people feel very strongly about this. They are either a fruit in their salad type or no fruit in their salad. So if you're not one, you can ignore this, but I think it's nice to have fruit. So there's some canned fruits you can keep on hand, right? Okay. Mandarin oranges, never, but they take a long time to go bad. Dried fruit obviously takes a long time to go bad. You don't need that much of it, right? It's pretty dense, so just a sprinkling of cranberries, or my favorite is dried cherries, really make your salad exciting. Those are a couple of the little extra things that you can keep. Nuts, seeds also really spice up a salad in addition to some vegetables.
And again, we talked a little bit about the mac and cheese front, but what about the sweets front? What about, again, those sort of, should I have them around the house or should I not have them?
So I do think this is a know yourself. People have trigger foods, right? Trigger foods are things that once you start eating them, it's impossible to stop. A lot of people really can't have those at home because they just feel like they can't manage the amount. So you have to find foods that are in between.
Okay.
If you're someone who really craves a sweet, and if you really want that, you're going to go out and get ice cream, you should keep something at home that will fulfill that, but you won't want to go crazy on. So a lot of people find dark chocolate works that way because it's sweet, but it's not so sweet that you want to eat the whole bar. So find something like that for you. I like Fig Newmans. They're delicious, but you don't want to eat a whole box of Fig Newmans. It's a bag, technically. And they're much better than Fig Newtons. So something like that I think is a nice in-between to keep around. And the other thing I forgot to mention, so salads, big category coming up, but pasta is always something a lot of people rely on as a staple, quick meal. I also like to make that a lot more exciting. So, and more healthful also. And things you can keep in the pantry that don't go bad very quickly are things like artichoke hearts are really delicious in pasta. Beans, a quick way to add some protein. So cannellini beans are really good. So think about things like that, maybe canned olives, black olives, things that will kind of add the nutrient density. And also, frozen veggies are great for that because it's hard to ruin it and it goes right in pasta. Then you end up with this big giant bowl of food that has vegetables and healthy fats and pasta all in one.
And so let's talk a little bit about the freezer. I just want to venture a little bit from the pantry over to the fridge while we
clean it all out while you're doing it. If you're doing it once, clean out the freezer too.
It's amazing how much can accumulate in there. The foods can go bad in the freezer, can they not?
They can. Quality is an issue here. So yes, if you have 10-year-old freezer foods, they will be freezer burned within an inch of your life, and you do not probably want to eat them. The other thing I want to note about cleaning out and organizing your freezer is that a lot of times people with frozen vegetables, you just chuck it in there, it gets in this weird, crazy shape, and then you have like 6 that are in this weird, crazy shape and impossible to organize. So I encourage you, if you're doing a clean out, include the frozen foods, throw them on the counter for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it takes to be able to pound that into a flat shape. Then you can stack frozen stuff on top of each other and be able to see what's happening in there.
And frozen vegetables and fruits are actually a really good staple to have on because they freeze them at the peak of freshness and actually really do have a lot of good nutrients to.
They're often more nutritious than the fresh stuff for that reason, absolutely.
And let's go up to the fridge. Probably a good time to revisit maybe condiments.
Condiments are one that people tend to have from really unfortunately long time ago because you don't use a lot. Nobody's pounding like a whole can of, thing of mayonnaise at one time. But so yes, having one time a year where you check some of those dates is definitely a good thing.
Okay, so spring cleaning, as you go through your clothes, you're looking towards the summer months. There's ways, go through your pantry. The reorganization just sounds like it'll put you on the right foot heading into summer when you want to do other things besides, be stuck in your kitchen and looking around for stuff because you've got places to go and people to see.
And I think it's an efficiency issue. So if you are trying to do quick evening meals, most of us are, you want to be able to find the things that you need very quickly. You want to know exactly where they are. So, not having to search through everything to do it really improves your time efficiency.
Well, I appreciate giving us some tips, again, as folks are thinking of spring cleaning, because finally it looks like it's a little springier here. We appreciate your coming in, Shira, and again, we'll have some links and some more information when you come back and look at this on GoLocalProv.com. Shira Hirschberg, thank you so much.
Thanks,
okay,
Kate.
I'll let you go around. Shira Hirschberg with All Foods Nutrition giving us some tips on spring cleaning, specifically your pantry. What you can look for now is spring is in full swing, looking into the summer months. Appreciate Shira coming into the studio, one of our Go Local regulars. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome now my next guest into Go Local, Jonathan Stone, Executive Director of Save the Bay. I appreciate your taking the time to come up this way to talk with us.
Thanks, Kate. I'm glad to be here.
If you might have seen last week, Go Local did put up Save the Bay, filed a complaint in Superior Court. Now this is pertaining to the Coastal Resources Management Council and specifically appointees, who gets to appoint whom, and specifically looking at the role of the governor's office. So walk us through a little bit of this. You were basically questioning the process of who's currently on it, looking retroactively, and why this is such a big deal to Save the Bay.
Sure. Well, I think it's a good place to start is to spend a couple minutes on the agency itself. The Coastal Resources Management Council has jurisdiction over all regulation in the coastal region of Rhode Island and Narragansett Bay and Rhode Island Sound. So the agency has got issues permits for development along the coastline and manages things like aquaculture, dredging, harbor management plans, and so forth. So it's a critically important agency for Rhode Island. And the council itself, the decisions of the council are made by folks who are appointed by the governor to make tough decisions at the council. And years ago, when the council was first set up, the legislation that authorized the council was drafted by the General Assembly, and the General Assembly set it up so that the Assembly itself got to appoint 8 members of the council, and the governor appointed 8, which made for a total council of 16.
Okay.
So that's the brief history, according to Stone, about the council. In 2004, a constitutional amendment was passed in Rhode Island called the Separation of Powers Amendment, and that deprived the General Assembly of the authority to make appointments to executive branch agencies. So here we are these many years later, and the statute has never been changed, and so there's some confusion about how many members of the council the governor can appoint. The statute says 8. The council currently has 10 members on it.
Okay.
So one of the questions we're trying to get the court to rule on, to opine on, is how many individuals does the governor have the authority to appoint?
And so really trying to pull this apart and find that out. When do we expect to be able to get a decision on this?
Well, that's a good question. There is the governor's office has, I think, 20 days to respond to our complaint, and then it goes before the court. And I'm not sure, I can't honestly tell you how many months it will be. It'll be, I think, measured in months before we have a ruling from the court.
Okay, so currently we're at 10 at this point?
Correct. We're at 10 at this point. And the statute also says that for the council to conduct business, it needs a quorum of 7. So during Governor Chafee's administration, the governor, at the time, Governor Chafee, reached an agreement with the Senate President to add 2 council members to the 8 that he was entitled by the statute to appoint, to bring it to 10, so that the council wouldn't run into this problem of not having a quorum. So that's how we arrived at this number 10. And I should just say, Kate, that one of the reasons we're very concerned about it is the composition of the council matters a lot in terms of how decisions are made and who gets to make them. Which gets to the second part of our filing. The second part relates to the qualifications of council members. The General Assembly set up the CRMC so that council members represented coastal communities, which are most affected by the regulations promulgated by the council. So that seems like a good idea to us. Save the Bay has always supported having coastal communities representing a majority of council members. And there has been a lack of clarity also on the number and the nature of these qualifications for people serving from coastal communities. Do they have to be elected or appointed, or can they be residents? The statute says they must be elected or appointed officials, meaning that they're in the role of actually representing the community, as opposed to just living someplace with that not being a factor in their appointment.
So you've got the complaint in Superior Court, but there just sounds like there's so many factors at play here. I mean, does there need to be a sort of from the court's standpoint, sort of a comprehensive, authoritative statement as to the composition of the council?
It's a great question. I mean, the answer is yes, there needs to be a definitive statement. The prior governors and prior General Assemblies have not found the time to amend the statute to make it current with separation of powers. So that's the ideal solution, is that the governor and the General Assembly get together, they work on a compromise legislation that basically reauthorizes the council with much clearer definition on how many appointments the governor can make in the composition. That hasn't happened, so that's really one of the things that prompted this complaint on ours, is to try and push that forward, because if the governor and the assembly aren't able or willing to resolve this, then we have to turn to the courts, and that's what we've done.
So prior to filing the complaint, Jonathan, what had been conversations between Save the Bay and the administration, or had there not been conversations?
No, we've been having conversations with governors going back almost 20 years now on this issue, or 15 years on the issue, and I think there's sympathy with our perspective that there is a lack of clarity, but there hasn't necessarily been the political will to take it the next step and try and resolve it through an amendment to the statute. And that's where we find ourselves today. You know, it's been really hard to get people's attention on it. And, you know, that's what we do, is we're trying to bring attention to an important agency, an important a role that the agency plays. It has a lot to do with the health of Narragansett Bay. So.
Well, you can read more about, again, the complaint filed by Save the Bay. Also, it was updated to provide a statement from the administration as well. But Jonathan, in your estimation, in your opinion, what's the best case outcome?
Well, I think what we're really looking for is clarity. It's not that one number or another number is better or worse. The first rule would be just to provide clarity on what the governor's authority is, so that decisions rendered by the council are deemed valid. And that's what we're looking for. Clearly, you want to have a situation where you have enough appointees so that the council doesn't run into problems achieving a quorum, because you know, it's our goal that the agency function as well as possible. You know, that's what we're after, is making sure the agency can do its job effectively.
There's no question that recent decisions by the CRMC might be in jeopardy by lieu of this lack of clarity on the issue.
You know, I think the answer is we don't know for certain, but I think my understanding is that the courts would generally rule that past decisions are entirely valid. We're not calling into question past decisions. And that's really not the issue here. It's more about looking forward and making sure future decisions are brought down by people who are properly appointed.
Well, I wanted to bring you in. Again, this was kind of a little bit of legalese when it was released, but folks, you know, you hear the CRMC and your ears pop up if you're living on the coastal areas for either business or environmental purposes. Anything else you want to share with viewers here, maybe about what's pending with the CRMC right now and what Save the Bay is looking to achieve?
Well, I'll give you one example, Kate, because it's a great question. CRMC is it's sort of the state agency that very few people know about that exerts really profound influence on Rhode Island. And an example of that is I think all of us, or many of us, enjoy seafood from Rhode Island. And oysters are, you know, we have a growing aquaculture industry in Rhode Island, and oysters are exported from the state all over the East Coast. They're delicious, they're fabulous. We have great oyster farmers. In fact, we have so many that it's becoming a bit of a challenge in certain of the salt ponds, where you are starting to see potential conflicts between oyster farmers and other users of the bay. This is an example of a role that the council plays in managing the growth of the oyster fishery. And they're doing their best to respect the interest not only of the oyster farmers, the aquaculture farmers, but also fishermen, boaters, sailors, swimmers, all the other folks that use the bay. So this is you know, why Rhode Islanders really should care.
That's one of the issues facing the CRMC. And we did have Save the Bay on recently with your Citizen Water Reporter project.
Oh, right,
How's
yeah.
that going so far?
Great. I mean, we have technology is a wonderful thing, and we have an app that's now available on our iPhones or smartphones that you can use to track, you know, to monitor the environment. And that could be something as simple as taking an image of a pile of trash that's appeared on your local beach and you want to share that, or monitoring tides and flooding events. We have a lot of coastal flooding these days. So we're using it with our members and volunteers to really be citizen watchdogs on the environmental health of the bay. And it's really neat. It uploads everything to the web, and it locates time, or provides time, location, and other information that's really relevant to monitoring the health of Narragansett Bay.
And it really helps to have like the boots on the ground, because
Right.
you can't be everywhere at all times.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crucial.
Again, download the app, be able to provide that. Talk with us a little bit about Save the Bay and concern maybe for sea level rise.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's a fact. It's happening, and we're seeing it more and more. I mean, here we are a couple of blocks from Water Place, and Water Place will be underwater during storm events and particular high tides.
Okay.
You know, from an environmental point of view, it's a real problem for certain types of habitat. One good example would be salt marshes, which are really the kind of the nursery for shellfish and sea life in the bay. We have thousands of acres of salt marsh, and they're really very sensitive. The health of marshes is very sensitive to sea levels. And what we're seeing now, unfortunately, is that as sea levels are rising, even if it's just a matter of inches, the health of our marshes are declining.
Okay.
and that is not a good thing. And we're working hard with the CRMC and other partners to explore ways we can help make these salt marshes more resilient in the face of what's coming, which is rising sea levels.
Well, I appreciate your coming in to talk with us about CRMC, about the issues facing the state with Save the Bay. And again, I think this is twice in 2 weeks we've now had Save the Bay here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. So I appreciate your taking the time to come in, provide a little more context. Again, you can read the piece on GoLocal pertaining to the complaint filed. And per Jonathan's perspective, just looking for that clarification.
Great. Thanks a lot for having me,
Jonathan
Kate.
Stone, thanks
really
so much.
Appreciate it.
I'll let you go around the corner.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome Bob Whitcomb. We're catching him at the front end of the week. Appreciate it today.
Right. We're just trying to confuse people. This is a test. This is only a test.
Keep folks on their toes. Speaking, you probably didn't hear, he walked in and made a little joke about being from the government. A few things, you know, since you were at your last column that has popped up on GoLocal.
There's been so much violence because of that column. I don't remember anything.
One of the facets actually is talk about the film tax credit. The state just put out a study about it might not being the most cost-effective tax credit there is, but you came to the defense of the program.
Sort of. I'm a little ambivalent about that. The trouble is you can't measure it, the psychic effect. Does it make people feel prouder that they're, you know, scenery from around here? You know, probably, but you can't quantify it. Like a lot of this tax credits, if you can't quantify it, and I think that's particularly subjective. You're talking about the effect of image, cooler and warmer. So it's also, I know a million here, a billion there, eventually you're talking about real money, but it's a pretty insignificant amount of cash.
It's small, but you know, eyebrows were raised about that recent report, and
Yeah,
Bob wrote about
I'm
it.
a little bit tormented about it. I think the better way to get people to make moves around here is to fix the roads, to have people as part of their regular jobs promote the place, whether it's you're running a college or running a government agency, promote the place, just talk it up, you know. Invite people to come and stay in your attic and walk around the neighborhood.
Come stay in the attic.
Yeah.
Speaking of a million here, a million there, GoLocal did have an editorial today saying might be time to look at pulling the plug on Deloitte.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. That would wreak havoc, though, wouldn't it? You know, I don't. Who would be the best replacement for Deloitte? Now, as you know, I'm not a great fan of Deloitte, but I don't know how you do that. You know, we're crossing. The scorpion is on top of the frog crossing the river, and you know, where do we go? I don't know. I'd be very leery of that. I think better to have them, well, finish the job and then arrest them.
As we see
Now,
hundreds of millions.
It's been a fiasco, but as you and I have talked, this isn't the only place where they've been a fiasco. There have been other states, other cities with somewhat similar problems dealing with social benefits. And, you know, it's a huge company, but to push them off the cliff now might cause too much
It's
havoc.
tough. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Very
know,
tough. They're trapped us.
how
They're
much is
trapped us.
enough if you keep sort of pouring money down the money pit? Actually, the house that was in the money pit, it might be on the market again. I'll have to.
Okay. I wonder if it would have been better if they'd somebody suggested if we'd broken up this whole project, I think it's been a GoLocal, broken up the project and there were different vendors for each one, something like that, so they couldn't do this kind of broad-ranging Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union damage.
Bite off a little bit more than they could chew.
Everything, you know, a little, you know, kind of a little accounting firm, a consulting firm do this part and that part, and then kind of glue it all together, rather than giving the imperialistic Deloitte the whole thing to screw up. Which, so, again, to defend them, they screwed up in other places, too.
Not just here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rhode Island, the big story today on GoLocal is taking a look at potential gubernatorial candidate Matt Brown's campaign contributions from when he was Secretary of State, now running, no doubt about it, to the left of Gina Raimondo right now.
It sounds like the membership of the Cosmos Club. Yeah, these Matt's backers have often usually skewed wealthy.
So what's your thoughts on that? He comes out with a letter saying we have to fight Wall Street, we have to fight the entrenched interests.
Yeah, but you know that's often been the case. You have very rich people, you know, who are you know, supported by other very rich people taking progressive stands. You know, Michael Bloomberg, Nelson Rockefeller. You know, so it's not unusual.
Are you calling Matt Brown the Michael Bloomberg of Rhode Island?
No, not quite, not quite. And I think that both the Browns have some family resources there, but that per se doesn't bother me. It's sort of entertaining because we're all voyeurs. I mean, it's like we like lists of rich people, fancy colleges to get into, you know, fancy clubs like the Agawam, you know, the whole thing. Everybody loves to read about rich people.
You know, you absolutely have a point. And it was interesting, too, because, you know, throughout the presidential campaign, you know, Bernie Sanders liked to say, my average donation was $25, no whether that's been verified is still up to some debate. But the average donation for you know, Matt Brown was several $100s. I mean, a lot of times, you know, the true blood progressives like to say that they're the populace, that they're really getting that.
Yeah, no, it's like Mr. Steyer who wants to impeach Trump. He's given a lot of money. Soros has given a lot of money. I don't think that necessarily means anything. I don't think it's really it's not really hypocrisy, it's sort of entertaining. The question is, what are their policies? That's all I care about. I mean, do they believe that the top marginal rate should be raised, you know, top marginal tax rate? Do they believe in Medicare for all? Stuff like that's really all I care about. And FDR wasn't super rich, but he certainly came from a very, you know, aristocratic, affluent background. And he was, you know, he was the leader of the modern man, you know, the common man. You know, he spoke to them probably better than any president ever has. And there he was with his plummy voice, you know, my friends, I would like to tell you about my bank reform. You know, this kind of, and he got away, they loved it, the coal miners, you know.
So let's go to another piece that
so be rich.
Be rich, says Bob. Yeah. GoLocal today was at an event early this morning. Folks in the jewelry district wanted to bring attention to this proposed 46-story tower. And this is Jason Fain, was approved by the 195 Commission, going before the City Planning Commission this week.
The Fain
Tower, 46 stories, would dwarf the Superman building here in this part of town.
Which is falling apart. We can see it dissolving in front of us, in fact.
It's crumbling
melting.
Crumbling as we speak. So, you know, talk with us. Does a 46-story tower sort of belong in the jewelry district? Do the people of the jewelry district really have a say in this versus the rest of the city?
Well, I mean, they should be consulted, but I don't think just the height per se is a bad thing. It is a city, and I think if it's a nice design, people can see it all the way down to the end of the bay. I think it'll probably be good for the city. I mean, they did. This was, of course, the viewers can't see it, but we're pointing to the Industrial Trust building. It was very high for the time, and it became a landmark. And I don't think the height per se is a bad thing. I hope it doesn't look like another condo tower in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Well, is that design is the most important component?
Yeah. To me, the design. Is it a distinguished design? I hope it doesn't look like a tower in Abu Dhabi either. But the height, I know my old friend Will Morgan would probably disagree with me on this, but I think it's good to have skyscrapers in a real city. It says it's a real city.
Will Morgan will be here in studio for Business Monday with Josh Fenton.
Yeah. My lawyer will be here too. Yeah.
So I
think it's good. It could be a good idea. Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on it. It's
Yeah.
going to go through
There
a lot.
he is, right there. Yeah.
These guys coming
Yeah.
into the studio, getting ready for
Yeah.
Business Monday. There's a lot. They still have a lot of hoops to go through because there's
Yeah.
Variances they have to achieve because that area is set at 100 feet and they want to go
That's
up to
right.
460.
And I can understand people have lived here a long time. This kind of cute little city, low horizon, kind of Dickens London. It's the way Boston used to be. Even in my boyhood, the tallest building was the United Shoe Machinery Building, which was maybe probably not even as high as the Industrial National Bank Building. And now, it's skyscrapers all over the place, but I think it looks pretty neat. It looks like a world city.
Well, it'll be interesting what happens moving forward. Again, that is on
Yeah.
Wednesday. Tuesday, tomorrow night, the mayor's going to be giving his budget address.
Yeah. Bitcoin. Right, Bitcoin, blockchain, and all that.
I do not believe we're going to be hearing any Bitcoin or blockchain
No, I don't
tomorrow
think
night.
so. Yeah, or maybe we'll move to the Chinese yuan or something as part of the accounting creation.
So, I mean, we've talked about this. We've talked about the speed cameras.
Yeah, which I favor.
I know, we know you
which
do.
made me a hated character.
But do you think the city's in good fiscal standing?
Well, a lot better than it was, 10, 15 years ago. I think it's still very fragile, I would say that. I think the full effect of the contracts, labor contracts, which go back to really the real origin, go back to when Buddy Cianci was mayor. I think it's still a real problem. I think it's fragile, and I'm worried about what will happen in the next recession.
Well, I
Yeah,
anticipate
yeah.
maybe what we hear from the mayor tomorrow night might be some fodder for your column this weekend.
Yeah, probably. I think I'd be interested to hear what kind of planning they're making for changes in the business cycle. The city is still fragile. We've had an economic expansion since spring of 2009. What happens in the next recession? I hope they're making arrangements.
That's the billion-dollar question, the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
So it's a little early in the week to anticipate what we might see next Sunday, but anything on the horizon?
Well, I think we'll find out more about the Korea thing. I think, again, I don't think Mr. Kim is going to give up his nukes, as I've written. I think that's a illusion and a delusion. I think, what else going on? I think be interested to see how the tourist season is looking for Rhode Island. I know
Volvo's coming up
into Newport, and kind of how that looks. Is going to be a prosperous, successful season. I'm interested to see what comes out of the universities and the colleges, but you usually get news toward the end of the year. It could be a scandal. It could be somebody giving another $100
million, which you wrote about last weekend.
I hope it has more effect on improvement in brain science than the Annenberg gift of $50 million has had on the improvement of public education.
Well, follow the money, and so we'll keep an eye out for your column this coming weekend. Again, it's early in the week. There's a lot's going to happen between here and there.
Okay.
I appreciate it, Bob.
Okay, Bob.
We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Take your coffee. Bob Whitcomb catching him on a Monday here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, talking a little bit about the latest news on GoLocal, the story about Matt Brown's fundraising from when he was Secretary of State, the piece today about opponents to the 46-story tower, the Thane Tower proposal on the 195 land, and more here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. So thanks for joining us this Monday. We had Sherry Hirschberg with All Foods Nutrition talking about spring cleaning your cupboard. It's that time of year where you look to shake things up and make sure you have what you need. Gave you some good tips about how to tackle spring cleaning both in your kitchen and your pantry. And then Jonathan Stone with Save the Bay, they put out a release last week that we have on GoLocal pertaining to addressing the CRMC and its composition and looking to find out just who the governor can appoint. They're looking for clarification on that. Hopefully, he said sooner rather than later, talked about some of the big issues facing the CRMC, including oyster farming and the parties involved. And of course, Bob Whitcomb, appreciate him coming in here to the studio. We have a 4 o'clock show for you that will have Josh Fenton with Business Monday, Gary, the Money Man Sass, Saul Kaplan, architect, critic Will Morgan, and more. So you'll be sure to want to check out the show at 4. I'll be back tomorrow here on the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. Thanks for watching. We appreciate your feedback. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, but be sure to tune in at 4. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.